the show focused on delivering beneficial information on everything to do with products and services that can improve your life. This is Experts on Call on AM 650.
Welcome back to the program. We're talking roofing on today's program. We have two roofers, roof experts in studio. Eric Dennis from Roy Dennis Roofing is here, and Sean Lang is president of Interprovincial Roof Consultants, also with us in studio. Sean is a registered roof observer, as you identified a few minutes ago. You're also a professional member of the Roof Consultants Institute.
Yep.
Of course, Eric is a member of the Roofing Contractors Association of British Columbia. We've been talking about the evolution of the industry and the fact that both our guests sit on the technical committee of the Roofers Contractors Association, and always you're constantly being barraged by manufacturers who want their new product to become the next big thing in British Columbia. How frequently, Eric, are you approached by manufacturers with new stuff?
We get approached quite often. They come through our office touting these new products before, what they're doing is they're looking for your approval prior to coming to the RCABC, because the RCABC is the actual rubber stamp saying that this product is the real world thing.
Also, they lobby a few members in advance, hoping to win them over and influence the vote a little.
Sure,
we get that too.
Of course. Yeah. And what manufacturer wouldn't do the same, right?
You have to learn how to screen your calls sometimes.
Well, I'm sure. But, of all of these products that come forward for approval by your technical committee, you and your other members, how many actually make the cut, Sean? How many of those are good enough to be brought into British Columbia as an accepted new product for the roofing community?
It really depends on who's bringing it. There's a lot of manufacturers that are already in the system, that already have lots of products in the system.
Sure. So this would be an upgrade rather than something new.
Yeah, they're just changing. Sometimes it's changing the name. Because even if they change the name, they have to get it reapproved.
Right.
So something as simple as that, it has to come through the system. But generally, if it's a brand new manufacturer, something from the States that's trying to make it their way into our market, we look at them a little bit more closely than the manufacturers that are already on board.
Sure.
They've already got good products in the system.
They also need a certain amount of real life field applications.
2 years.
So they need to
2 years.
We need to be able to see that product and have a track record already installed somewhere.
Okay, so have you been part of, is something that we do in British Columbia, do we participate in those field trials?
Occasionally.
Okay.
Occasionally.
But usually, if they want their product brought on board as a viable new product, they should have all that testing and tryout stuff done well in advance of submitting it to you for approval, wouldn't they?
Well, let's face it, most of the guys, when they come, they've already done their homework.
Absolutely.
They know where the standards are. They know what the benchmark is.
Right.
Well, surprisingly, a lot of them don't. Actually, what I've found is that they know they get all their CSA testing done, and all the ASTM tests are all up to par and all this. But the one that they don't have is that we want to see 2 years of field application in our province.
Right.
In fact, in our lower mainland would be preferable, because we have such a unique climate here. The RCABC wants to see that history here in our lower mainland, so that we can see it works here.
Right.
It may work in the States, it may work back east, but here's a unique climate. So it has to work here before it's going to be approved in the system. And for our company, it's the same thing. We don't want to specify a new product that we haven't seen working in our province, right? So we don't like to use our clients as guinea pigs.
Right.
And spend their money to try and get that manufacturer his 2 years of field testing in the province.
And it may turn out to be an inferior product.
It may blow up in our face.
Exactly.
So personally, I don't like to do that. I'd like to see it used by somebody else first and hear the horror stories first, or hear the glory stories, whichever way it's going to go. And then I'll go, okay, well, we'll give it a shot.
Eric, during the break, we were talking about some of the things that are important to you, and you talked to me about the science of roofing. Now, following Sean's opening remarks about how little those of us with roofs over our heads, and that would be most of us, how little attention we pay to that roof and that roofing system. Here is the flip side of that coin, a guy who is totally into the science of roofing.
Absolutely. The roof reacts and your house reacts completely different with everything you do to it. If you vault a ceiling, versus having an attic, it's going to react differently to the roof. If a different material on your roof may work well with a vaulted ceiling versus an attic. Flat roofing, if you have insulation in the attic cavity versus having insulation above the roof deck, it's a real science, and it takes a real pro to know those things. That's one of the things that we like about working with IPRC, is that they've gone in and done the testing, the core samples. They've really examined the building, and when we get a tender package from them, we know that here's a system that's going to work very well for this building. They've done the testing, they've looked at the science of it, and it reduces our liability, and it allows us to put a better product on that homeowner or building owner's building.
Right.
So it's a real benefit to us when we're working with consultants, because they get right into it, and they build the tender around that building, because every building is different.
Absolutely.
You have different products. You have concrete, wood, there's steel, there's
even within a strata complex where you have multiple individual townhouse units, and they all look very similar. In fact, there might be 2 different drawings that were used for the whole complex.
Right.
But the builder may have taken shortcuts partway through. He may have done 4 of those buildings perfectly, and then all of a sudden things have changed.
Eric is nodding very knowledgeable. As soon as he said builder's shortcuts,
Yeah,
Eric went, yep.
Hello. So by the time you get to the 20th building, it's a totally different building. From the outside, if you squint and you look at
different framing crew.
Different framing crew even.
Could be even.
So when you get into the building, and this is where it's very important to start looking at the ventilation of the building, particularly on a sloped roof system. You want to make sure that every area of the attic is going to be able to breathe properly, because what can happen is if you get excessive heat within the attic, the heat will actually cook the shingles that are on the roof. So they'll actually be degraded by that excessive heat from below, because now you've got the sun beaming down on the shingles.
Which degrades them in the first place.
It degrades. They're designed for a certain amount of degradation.
But eventually it'll break them down, right?
Yeah, but they're not designed to be degraded from below.
From below. That's almost like sabotage.
Yeah. So you've got a great shield that you're holding up in front of you,
Sure.
but somebody's stabbing you in the back.
Right.
And that's exactly what it's like. So if you don't deal with that and make sure that there's a shield on your back, or nobody's standing behind you with a knife, which in our industry could be tough, if you don't do that, then you're actually shortening the life of your roof system. You're wasting your money in a sense.
Right.
So what we do is when we go to write a specification, we're looking for all those issues that we find over the years of writing the specs. We've looked at, we've discovered, we've found the issues. We change our specs constantly to try and encompass all these new things that we're finding. And as architects are designing buildings differently, and they are, and as constructors are building them differently due to material costs and labor costs, the way that they used to build 20 years ago is different than the way they used to build now. So we have to adapt to that when we're designing specifications.
As a roofing consultant or roof consultants, are you in a position, Sean, ever to be phoned up by an architect who's designing a new thing, a new building or whatever, and saying something like, I'm just not 100% sure about the treatment the roof should deserve. Can you help me out? Has that happened?
I'm really glad you brought that up, because it doesn't happen enough.
Okay.
It happens, let's say, 0.5% of the time that it should happen. And it may be because the architects are knowledgeable enough to assemble the specifications for an entire building. But in my opinion, and from what I've seen, they really should allow some professionals who are focusing on those particular trades and particular disciplines to aid them in their design. Because the beauty of the building is often overpowering the function and the practicality of the building.
Right.
So you have these wonderful looking dormers and these wonderful looking details on the edges of the roof that you see from the ground. They're horrible to roof in.
Okay.
And the amount of extra money that it costs to install the roofing is waste just to accomplish this design.
Right.
Okay, they want the design. I get it. It's beautiful. This is their job, is to create beautiful structures. I understand that. But when it comes to function and to actual quality for the dollar, it's not happening in a lot of cases.
Yeah, and we find that we're finding this stuff out on site as they're building it. And the cost to fix the problem mid-flight of a job is more than...
Oh, and then it's a struggle.
Yeah.
Because the contractor's already put in his price for the job based on the plans.
Right.
But now the real world happens, the real build happens, and he shows up on the job and things are different. Or they're just weird, and they're changing as they go because a lot of architectural designs change as they go.
Yes.
So now the contractor has to fight for the extras. Well, you bid the job, so it says the general contractor. That's your price. I don't want to see any extras. Well, now so here we come as the hired inspectors. So we haven't been involved in the design of the building.
Right.
Haven't been involved in the design of the roof system. So I'm coming in just as an inspector now, and I'm given this piece of paper from the architect that says install the roof to these standards. I've seen specifications from an architect that actually have the improper materials in there for, let's say, a torch down system, and they're using wood fiberboard insulation or cover boards. And then you're kind of scratching your head going, well, this doesn't even make sense. And you want this to work.
Right.
So then all of a sudden, from our perspective, we're doing extra work because now we're aiding in the design of the roof system after the fact, and basically for no money, right? Because we're only hired to do inspections, not design. So now we have to jump in and start doing that part of the job.
Does it ever crash, Sean? Does it ever?
Yes,
you
it crashes all
hit
the
a
time.
point where this isn't going to work. This is simply it's poorly designed, and we can't make it work.
Yeah.
Nice try, but go back to your board.
Well, it happens, and unfortunately, it ends up costing somebody some money because the work has to be redone. The job gets delayed.
I suppose if it's a new strata building or a new apartment complex or townhouses, ultimately, well, the builder's going to have to take the hit. But if it's an individual home with a reno job or a complete redesign going, that homeowner is going to get whacked, aren't they?
Well, it always comes down to the end user. Even if it's a new strata building or
a facility building,
the builder is still going to go after more money to the end user in the end.
Yeah, right.
So the end user always gets stung the hardest.
Yeah.
And it's the end user that really needs to arm themselves with knowledgeable people to get it done.
They are the ones that get stung, but everybody gets stung on the way. Because even our company, if I now have to give some free design work to try and help this job along, I don't want to not get work from these people again by saying I will absolutely not help in the design unless I'm paid.
Right.
I have done that because it's been ridiculous.
Right.
And I knew that I was going to waste hours and hours, and if I'm not getting paid, why should I?
Sure.
So you get into those situations where you have to give a little more than you want to, and the contractors do that too, because I've heard from contractors that I'll just do it. I just need to get this job done. If I have to go for this extra $500, it's going to make me look bad. I want to work with this general contractor again.
Sure.
So everybody ends up eating some of the cost.
Yeah.
So if it was all done properly from the get-go, everybody would be doing a better job, more on time, more on budget, properly. At the end result to the client wouldn't be an upcharge because they already know the cost up front. There's no surprises. And the end result is a better roof system.
Right.
A better building.
Okay.
Because if all facets of the building are attacked in the same way, you wouldn't have the problems. And these problems can actually flow into plumbing. The plumbing pipes are supposed to come through the wall, but it can't come through that wall at that point because this is being built here.
Right.
So there's other things that happen on a building.
And yet, to 99% of us who are not in the roofing industry, it's that thing on top of the house that keeps the rain out, keeps the kids dry, and keeps me warm.
Your big umbrella.
That's it. That's it. It's about as complicated as it gets. And, that's why it's so interesting, Eric, to hear you talk about the science of roofing. And Sean gets into this as well, too. I mean, it's an industry. There's a huge thing going on that most of us are absolutely unaware of.
Yeah, and it's our biggest challenge out there. We go out and we bid on homes to re-roof these homes, and we're talking about the science of it and what the products they need, and they got this Pete in the pickup truck that comes along, doesn't know anything about it, has no real experience in the science of it. Yeah, he can install a shingle. I mean, it's 4 nails. It's a shingle. And it's got to flow, the water has to flow downhill. But really, is he looking at the customer's best interest by encompassing the entire system and the science of it?
And I suppose in some cases the customer doesn't want any more than a quick Band-Aid fix, Eric? And so Pete gets back in his pickup truck with his
keeps him in business.
His tab and hits the road again. And so that temporary fix is all that homeowner wanted. And of course, full well it's not going to hold very long, and the cost will triple, quadruple, or beyond next visit.
Or hidden damage.
Yeah.
A lot of people are in a situation where they may be wanting to sell their home, and they're planning to in the future,
right?
Or they're building.
And a lot of that going on these days.
Yeah. So when they're when they're faced with the choice of, do I redo the whole roof system and do I do it to proper standards? Do I make sure that it's done by an RCABC contractor? And do I have it inspected? Do I have a consultant involved? I want this to be top notch, and they'll watch the dollar value as the job's going along so that it's not going overboard in cost.
Right.
But I'm getting a decent roof. Or do I just get Johnny to put a roof on the building because I'm selling it in a year and I really don't care. I only need a year, and that's all I'm going to do. So there's different kinds of people out there, and unfortunately, the ones that just want that quick roof are the ones that keep the pickup guy going.
All right, I want to talk to you, Eric, about why you rolled your eyes and smiled so knowingly when I started talking about builders cutting corners. But we need to take a quick break first. We're talking roofing on the program today with Eric Dennis from Roy Dennis Roofing, and also in studio is the president of Interprovincial Roof Consultants, Sean Lang, and they're online, by the way, at IPRC.ca. You've got a couple of minutes while we do the ads. Why don't you slide over to the computer and check them out, and we'll be right back.
Delivering relevant and beneficial consumer information. This is Experts on Call, and there's more still ahead on AM 650.